Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's training industry webinar, The Joy of Learning, Why On-Demand Training is the Key to Happy Learners, sponsored by SAP Litmos. I'm Elizabeth Parker, Director of Marketing here at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you all decided to join us today. If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and locate your chat window and type in where you are joining us from today. I'm going to do the same. Of course, now is always a great time to familiarize yourself with the platform. And go ahead, like I said, get acquainted with that chat window. We'll be using it lots throughout the session today to engage with one another and to ask questions of our speakers. Let's see, lots of chats coming in. All of a sudden, we've got Carrie in Iowa, Gerald in Arlington, Texas. Welcome to you. Wonderful to have you all with us. We need to get started here in a minute, so I'm going to skip some of these things here. Just a reminder, everybody, today's webinar will be recorded and available on demand at trainingindustry.com/webinar, as well as at litmos.com. If you are just joining us, pop open that chat window or locate it to the right of your screen and let me know where you're joining us from today. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. Love to see all of you joining from all around the world. We've got Rune in Lima, Peru. Samantha's in Scottsdale, Arizona, one of our presenters today. We've got Jennifer in South Bend, Indiana. And let's see, we've got Mateus in Romania. Walter just typed in from Hayden, Indiana. Welcome to you. All right, everybody, we are getting started with today's program right now. So once again, welcome everyone to today's training industry webinar, The Joy of Learning, Why On-Demand Training is the Key to Happy Learners, sponsored by SAP Litmos. I'm Elizabeth Parker, Director of Marketing here at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you all decided to join us today. Before we get started, I do have just a few housekeeping items to review to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of your time with us. Throughout today's event, feel free to utilize your chat window to engage with other attendees, myself, or our speakers. We'll have a dedicated time for Q&A towards the end of the session, so be sure to submit your questions throughout the event in that chat window. We also encourage you to share the information you received today with your colleagues and network on social media. Please include the handles you see on your screen, Litmos Training Industry without the Y, and the hashtag TI Webinars. You will be receiving a short evaluation survey about today's event, so please do share your thoughts with us in that survey. And as always, today's webinar will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com. You'll receive a follow-up email from us that will include a link to the on-demand program, as well as a copy of today's slide deck. If this is your first webinar with us, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's webinar, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and our podcast. Make Training Industry your go-to resource for learning solutions by visiting trainingindustry.com. Today's webinar is brought to us by SAP Litmos. SAP Litmos develops e-learning solutions for top-performing companies. An established leader in the market since 2007, Litmos offers the world's easiest-to-use LMS and a comprehensive course library. Thousands of companies trust the solutions to deliver transformative training to employees, customers, and partners. Litmos solutions are used by more than 30 million people in 150 countries across 35 languages. Now, to get us started, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to today's speakers, Dr. Tom Whelan and Samantha Lang. Dr. Tom Whelan is the Director of Corporate Research at Training Industry, where his work focuses on learning and development research to inform best practice recommendations for workplace training. Tom has published in leading journals and presented at international conferences on topics such as personality assessment, survey research methods, virtual workplaces, and training evaluation. And Samantha Lang is content director for SAP Litmos. She has contributed to B2B software marketing teams for more than 20 years, specializing in messaging, content creation, branding, and creative strategy. She entered the e-learning industry in 2015 when she joined Litmos and continues to grow her interest and knowledge in the space. Tom and Samantha, I am going to hand it off to you. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So to begin with, we are going to go over the agenda very, very quickly. First and foremost, we're in our journey to talk about the joy of learning and why on-demand training is the key to happy learners. We're going to start with discussing the complexity of the on-demand experience. After describing that, we're going to discuss why companies should care about their on-demand experience. And then lastly, talk about some of the relationships that we found in a study that we did between happy learners and on-demand learning. And then hopefully at the end we'll save time for questions. All right, so to begin with, let's talk a little bit about the complexity of the on-demand experience. So in the past 2 years in particular, the story of L&D has been about being virtual and distributed. And on-demand learning has been a big factor for organizations in meeting those needs. And it was a part of the story before, but its role has grown larger, particularly larger in the recent past. And for some organizations, on-demand learning was a hasty tourniquet at best. They were perhaps caught by surprise by the shift, didn't have everything in place, and it was an uphill slog to really affect any meaningful change. For others, they were poised to make that shift. They were ready to embrace it, ready to jump in with both feet. But in this story, no matter where an organization kind of falls on either side of that fence, it's easy to lose track of the most important part of the equation, which is learners. So in this research that we did, we asked the question, what could learning possibly have to do with meaning at work? How do we tie the learning experiences that people have to the training the learning experiences I have to their felt experience of meaning, to their love for their job. Is there a relationship between those two things? What does it look like? Where are the crosswalks? And it was a hunch. We didn't know what we'd find. And to be honest, it was a bit of a risky hunch. We could have found nothing. But we did. And today we're going to zoom in on a particular part of those results, obviously having to do with on-demand learning. So to start, let's define the ingredients that go into making up an on-demand learning experience. So in our study, for respondents, the measure that we were using defines on-demand learning satisfaction as kind of having 3 forks in it. So it's about their experience of online courses in general, but zooming in on its features, so what are the buttons they're pressing more or less, the purpose of those on-demand online courses, so what goals were they set for, what was it used for, and also the content, what did it look like, how did it feel, how relevant and up to date did it seem, so when we talk about kind of on-demand learning or online courses and that kind of things, it's not this single thing. There's a few different component pieces to it, and in this research, it's very important to I think talk a little bit about who we asked about their perceptions of online learning. So we had a carefully curated sample of working professionals in a variety of industries, tracked pretty well demographically, and we were focused on respondents that were coming from larger employee populations to the extent that we could get them. And so we got a pretty good mixture of people. I scrubbed the data pretty good. So the 432 respondents that we were left with gave us, I think, a very, very fair picture of not only meaning at work, but how people basically step foot in these on-demand learning experiences. And so part of what we asked them was to make ratings about their satisfaction about their on-demand experience. So these were the things that on the screen that learners liked the most, that these professionals resonated with. They were most satisfied with navigation. So it's about making learning content modular on kind of our end, the L&D side of things. And by making it modular, we can navigate it differently. Learners can navigate it differently based on their needs. And that's something that is unique to the on-demand format compared to traditional forms of training. The next thing on the list, ease of scheduling. I mean, time flexibility is a no-brainer for the most part, right? Next on the list, tracking progress. I like to think of this as, people like to look in the rearview mirror, and anytime you can give them a trail of breadcrumbs so they can see kind of where they've gone and maybe think more strategically individually about where they need to go next, the more you can do that, the better. And then lastly, the breadth of available topics. With on-demand learning in particular, organizations are able to address a broad swath of learning needs. And most importantly, that learning is perpetually available. So there's not necessarily a similar need to have resources like you would need with traditional forms of training to support such a breadth of topics. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam to talk about SAP Litmos's take on this.
Well, first of all, I mean, all of those four things are great to see, and not surprising that those are things that learners are liking and great to see. But we kind of want to take it a step further, which is, Tom, your slide had, one of the things in your survey that people liked is, ease of navigation within a course itself, as well as some of the stuff, ease of, scheduling, calendaring, tracking, that kind of stuff. To take that to the next degree would be to say that the whole experience should be easy, beyond just those things in the survey. And what we like to say, and kind of how we approach it from the Litmos side, is that the entire learning experience within the LMS, and of course I'm entirely biased, but that it should feel a bit like a consumer experience. We're all so, I mean, in this day and age, nobody wants to have their business systems feel like these clunky things that are totally different from the systems we use in our day-to-day, or the apps that we use in our day-to-day life. So it's like going and finding a learning course or whatever, or setting up a learning path. It should feel as intuitive as going on your Spotify, and I'm going to drop some name brands, hopefully that's okay. But, I'm a Spotify fan. It should be as easy as like searching for a song on Spotify, and it just, knows what you're looking for, or searching for a video on YouTube. And that's kind of how we try to design the experience to make the whole thing easy. So whether it's navigation of the whole system, or within a course, as you were saying, Tom, or the ability to just really find what you're looking for in this big sea of content that's out there. That's what we see as sort of the big picture, if you will. Back to you, Tom.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah. So we wanted to make sure we have interaction in this. So we wanted to poll you, the attendees. So out of those four things that we described, we tried to create a few slides ago. We tried to rephrase them here a little more creatively. But what do you think your organization does best in its on-demand learning experience? There are many ways to define progress, and we track all of them. So so tracking progress is your strength. Scheduling and calendaring, you schedule your scheduling. That's how on top of it you are. Or is it breadth of topics? Your content is so comprehensive, there's already a course about this webinar content. Or is it D, navigation? What you have is so easy to navigate that you could not get lost if you wanted to.
I can't wait to see the answers here.
So everybody, I believe the way this works, if everybody clicks their answer, we'll give people a minute, and we'll move on to results.
I feel like we should play like the Jeopardy music in the background while we're waiting.
Mm-hmm. All right, looks like we have some submissions coming in. We're at 30 seconds. People have another 30 seconds to vote if you're going to vote.
Yeah, don't make me start humming the Jeopardy song.
Which of these 4 silly things do you think your organization does best in on-demand learning? All right, last couple seconds, everybody. All right.
Oh boy.
So Sam, you want to talk through these?
Wow. So there are so many ways to approximately track. Wow, that's really impressive.
That is.
That is great to see. That is, I mean, I'm always surprised at the answers to certain polls that we do on these types of events, but that's fantastic that 34% of you are defining progress and tracking it. Applause. And then schedule. I mean, so I wonder, Tom, what do you think as far as, I think different companies have different definitions of scheduling. I mean, and again, I'm biased because of the calendaring abilities that we have in the Litmos LMS, but how do you interpret that we schedule our scheduling?
Well, I mean, it's more about like ease of scheduling and calendaring and stuff like that. But I think what is notable to me is that what actually won with our sample lost here. You know, so the ability to navigate is kind of what won the day with our data. And here it is not the most popular. So to me, I think what we're seeing here kind of reflects the audience or the type of people that show up to a webinar versus maybe those that respond to a survey, because tracking progress and I think, you know, just evaluation and all that kind of thing, I know is a hotter topic, I think, within L&D than maybe if we're asking learners or maybe people are aware of outside of our sphere. So to me, this kind of reflects that people actually have their heads in the right place.
Yeah, and you know, as far as the ability to or we're so easy to navigate that 19% there. I mean, I wonder if that also applies to not just navigating a UI of an LMS, but like actually navigating through libraries of content. And one of your things on what people like in a couple slides back, you know, what people like is the breadth of content, and that's awesome. But if you can't navigate your way through, again, that, like, you know, there's a lot of information out there, but how do you find it? Can you make your way to what you want to actually find? And maybe that's, you know, if that's something that companies are having a hard time doing, that's an interesting bit of feedback there.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right. So let's go on from the things that people liked and describe what our data said about where things might need some work when it comes to on-demand training. So these were out of our data. These were the losers. I mean, now I say that, and you might look at it and be like, yeah, I'm still seeing a lot of people satisfied with these things. These don't seem like losers. And in that respect, they're not. But these were the weakest points, the things that companies were not doing as good of a job at and also tended to have the highest amounts of dissatisfaction. So it's not maybe necessarily that all these things are on fire, but they're certainly maybe limping along in a lot of organizations. And so these had to do with things like the relevance. You know, I mean, content can be great without being relevant. I mean, that describes the majority of YouTube. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
When it comes to things like supplementary course materials, to me, this reflects the idea that on-demand learning isn't just about the training part. Part of the attraction of it being on demand is that there are also resources that can be accessed on demand as well, and other takeaways that aid learning retention. When it comes to the freshness of content, I mean, I know there are a couple ways maybe to read that, but the way I look at it, it's like, don't let your overblown audio, terrible sweaters, and your corny font choices give you away. But also these types, I mean, I'm making a joke, but also these types of things signal to a learner whether or not they can have faith that content is up to date, or at least seems to have been reviewed recently. So freshness is not really about aesthetics. It's ultimately about trust and kind of signals to trust for the learner. And then lastly, suggestions for other courses. I mean, people are not only at this point accustomed to suggestion engines, they want them, and they want them to work well. I mean, we've been in a lot of ways trained by some that work well. We poke fun at ones that don't work well. And I think with respect to that sort of idea, giving people further avenues to explore, that was one of the areas that seemed to need the most work out of everything that we asked about, at least for what we found in this research. And now, just like with the last set, I'm going to turn it over to Sam to discuss SAP's view.
Well, and Tom, really quickly, because I'm going to move over to a different point, but just in regard to the freshness of content, that is something that, I mean, we hear from our customers, like some L&D people aren't aware of the fact that if you do have a sophisticated off-the-shelf content library, those courses are updated automatically. You don't have to do anything. I mean, if you have a compliance course that you've bought from our off-the-shelf library, when there's an updated version of it, it gets automatically updated. So you don't have to be doing sort of the sweeping and the cleaning through your own library. Now, of course, you do with your own proprietary content. That's your stuff. But if you're using off-the-shelf stuff, that's one kind of task that doesn't need to be on your checklist, because it happens behind the scenes. But that's sort of a side point. I think the more exciting thing to talk about is this idea in your survey, Tom, the idea of relevance and suggestions for other courses. I mean, the fact that those things are areas in the needs work category. And by the way, I thought those percentages actually weren't that bad. I mean, like you were saying,
they weren't.
They're not devastating. They're, it's, a lot of companies are doing a great job at this, but there are ways to actually solve some of this. And I think in certain cases, and this is anecdotal, but for some companies, and we know our customers, it's not that content or necessarily lack of content per se is the problem. It's how are you getting the most mileage out of the content that you actually have? And it can be great content. Some companies actually suffer from an overwhelming abundance of content. And the issue is more, how can you get learners to be able to not just find what they're looking for, because that's great. If depending on how your systems work, for things to be searchable and to have some of those capabilities where someone can actually effectively find meaningful, content that helps them. Beyond the seeking and the searching capabilities, so sort of the outside reaching in perspective, like I'm a learner, I want to go search and I need to go find what I'm looking for, and I'm going to kind of noodle around and look. In an ideal world, from a system out perspective, the really cool thing, and I'm not reading my slide, I'll go back to looking at the slide here, but AI is built in, again, entirely biased, but to have now these artificial intelligence capabilities within your LMS, which essentially in the context of an LMS means it's a learning recommendation engine. And the way it works, there's, it's based on prior activities, just like we're all used to having, things proposed to us, as I was saying, in reference to Spotify and YouTube, et cetera. that's the direction that learning technologies are going as well. And there's a lot of really nerdy stuff that Tom probably understands, that, it's, I don't know, metadata on content or whatever. But the reality is that we don't need, like, L&D people don't need to be like, well, I need to understand how this works. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that it does work, that your learners can go into a system and actually have appropriate and relevant, back to your point, Tom, relevant, suggested, information and paths given to them. That's really what matters, is that it should seem simple from the front end perspective, that someone can go on and say, oh, I've got these 5 courses recommended to me based on courses I've taken before, based on my role, these things that are meaningful and relevant to people, that they and it feels personalized. It feels like, oh, okay, I'm going to go check that out, because this isn't, like you were saying, Tom, it's easy to make fun of bad recommendation engines and different apps, but when it's good and when it's like, oh, that actually does make sense for me, and I want to go take that course collection or that path or what have you. But yeah, so this is definitely the direction that, good learning systems are going, is AI driven model.
All right, let's, are we ready to go to the poll?
Yeah, and by the way, Tom, do you see we threw our little training industry badge on that slide? Did you see?
I did. I noticed.
We threw that in there, of course. We're top 20. You can't take the marketing out of a girl, You can't.
No. Well, I mean, it's in your title. So it's appropriate for you to do it, not me. All right, let's get to the next poll. Kind of like last time, but flip side of the coin. What do you think your organization needs to improve most about its on-demand learning experience, based on the things that were the trouble spots from our research? So is it A, content relevance? Is irrelevant a kind word to describe some of what you offer? Is it the whole suggested content? Are you not even sure what a suggestion engine is? Is it C? Is it freshness? Stuff isn't fresh, but styles come back around. Like I'm holding on to all that bad 90s stuff I still have somewhere. Or D, is it about supplementary materials? Would it be nice? You don't have them, but it'd be nice if they existed. Which of these 4 do you feel like could be improved most at your company? And just like last time, we'll give people about a minute to click in. All right, starting to see some coming in. We're at almost 30 seconds. We're halfway there. All right, we're getting down to the last few seconds. It's now or never. All right. So let's see what we got.
Ooh. Interesting.
So interesting. So for our sample, the suggestion engine was the weak point. And here the clear winner of the weakness was supplementary materials. And kind of like last time, Sam, part of my guess would be, given we're talking to our people, to L&D folks, maybe we all know what counts as supplementary materials and what is supplementary materials if you squint at it and wish. that might be my hunch.
So what do you make? Oh, so I was referring to, we use a little bit different lexicon. I was referring to our AI capability as a recommendation engine, but it's the same. It's synonymous with suggestion engine. And You know, okay, even though 25% looks low-ish, I actually think that's kind of encouraging.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. What's your take on that?
So from my view, if the thing you need to improve most, or if what's even getting attention is the idea of a suggestion engine, that probably means you don't have a lot of other lower level problems creeping around in your training, and like I think thinking in terms of suggestion engines and learning pathways and things, it's trying to next level L&D. It's I think I know, I mean, I could be absolutely projecting here, but to me it's sort of indicative of the way that I think L&D has been forced to embrace what our function in an organization can be, and in the way it's been leveraged in the past few years to meet learning needs, you know, with uncertainty and everything, in a way that we've always had, but maybe we didn't get enough shine for it before, and with some growing realization that, like, hey, training actually can solve some problems. Strategically, what it can do is I think gone way beyond, you know, notions of, well, training is just a checkbox, or right, training is this stuff that, like, you do, everybody hates it, hopefully the catering is good and the sandwiches are decent, you know, and then you're done. You got to sit through it for most of the afternoon. You know, it's so far afield from that now that for I think for, you know, exactly to your point, Sam, for a quarter of the people attending this webinar to be scratching their chins about suggestion engines, that says a lot, I think, about where we are, just as a field, as a group of professionals.
It's really heartening. It really is. I mean, because, you know, we talk to all different people, of course, you know, as our customers, and they tend to be quite savvy. But sometimes we hear, you know, other things where, you know, companies are just barely getting started. So that's really encouraging. Also, I think the 14.8% there, that's also really, really encouraging. That the two lowest things is, like, people are like, no, we have relevant content. That's not something we think we need to do better. Very low percentages on that, you know, that having relevant content is something, or relevant, you know, whatever, broader than just content, you know, your whole program. And that even the freshness thing at 14.8, that's really great to see too, because obviously then, as you're saying, that's not something that's on people's radar, or the majority, that whatever, 85%, I don't do math, of people's radar as something that they need to improve. I mean, that's kind of awesome to see from this group. So I don't know, Tom, what do you think? I mean, as far as the two 14.8s.
I mean, so I look at both of those as, I mean, because they're both about content, like they're both kind of content themed, in terms of what is the learning experience like, and I think there is, it's interesting. It's like there's a different attitude in a lot of organizations towards, like, do we just have something that fits the bill, versus do we have something good? You know, and I think that both of these 14.8% kind of represent that, you know, like, it's not enough to just have some stuff that addresses it. Like, we need, you know, if we can't get best of the best, like, who came in second? We need at least the second place, you know, content. Like, we need something good, something that's as now as it can be.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really exciting to see.
All right, let's get on to the next section of this talk. So now that we've defined, I think in detail, the on-demand learning experience and kind of what it entails, and we've talked a lot about it. Let's talk about why bother. You know, I mean, like, thinking about it is nice and all, but why do it? Why would we audit our organization's learning to diagnose how to improve this experience? Like, besides just sounds like it would be a good idea, like, is there a data-based reason? And And so the way that we wanted to go after this in the research that training industry and SAP Litmos did was to approach it from how does learning impact meaning at work. And we didn't just make up a thing of like, well, what is meaningful work? It's like, I don't know. I think it's this. What do you think, Sam? And then we both nodded and decided that was it. We went to the library stacks and pulled a definition and a measurement approach for how to get at people's experience of meaning at work. And it's based on this researcher named Michael Steger. I'm going to guess that's how his name is pronounced. But he has this whole conceptualization of how people approach meaning, you know, how they make meaning, what motivates them. And it really is kind of, as the definition on the screen starts with, it's about what drives people's sense of purpose. And so this kind of, as I alluded to earlier, this is the question that we started with. And the question that we started with, knowing that the answer might be learning doesn't have any impact on people's sense of purpose. Maybe it just feeds it. Maybe it gives them the tools, but it itself is not a contributor to, you know, do I love it here? Would I stay late? Do I wear, you know, the company T-shirt on the weekend when nobody's looking? You know, like all of those kind of, you know, do I get a sense of satisfaction?
Do you drink from the company mug, Tom? Do you drink from the company mug? That's really important.
You know, and even better, have you been drinking from the same mug so long the label's almost worn off in the dishwasher, and you know, but that's your mug, and you know, like all of those. I mean, we're using silly examples, but it's all those things, the sense of purpose, this connection to meaning. And so we used the measurement scale that had been validated by this research team to measure meaning, and I mean, asks obviously the questions that we went through earlier on on-demand learning satisfaction, as well as a whole lot of other things. We put it all into a predictive model to ask what predicts meaningful work. What is it about the work experience and the learning experience that predicts meaningful work? And so we had a model with 14 different predictors in it. The model itself was significant. So there was a lot of things in there. And when Sam and I were talking about the structure for this research before we did it, the plan with how we approached this and kind of how we framed it was, let's give it a chance to not matter. So then if it does matter, we know it matters, because we're putting all these other things kind of, you know, alongside it that could potentially get in its way. You know, like, and talking about training factors and things like that. So we ran this model with all these different things in here, and as you can see on the screen, what predicts meaningful work came down to these 5 things out of the 14 that we tested. So it was job satisfaction. How much do you like your job? That makes sense. That's going to probably have some bearing on, you know, do you have a sense of purpose? If you hate it, it's hard to have a sense of purpose. Your work centrality. So how much do you already sort of define yourself by what you do? How committed you are to the organization that you're working for, not just work in general, but the place that direct deposits your paycheck. And then the last 2 had to do with learning. And one was overall training effectiveness. So just kind of in general, is the training experience positive kind of on the whole at a global level? But then on-demand learning satisfaction was significant. And this was notable to me when we were analyzing this, because of what else we had in this model that didn't matter. Because we had things like training motivation, you know, so how motivated are people to engage with training? Does that affect their meaning? How do they see the benefits that they get from training? Does that affect their sense of meaning? Their general training satisfaction, you know, so kind of by and large, like, are instructors good? Is delivery good? Is, you know, like a far broader swath of things, you know, is that related to meaning? And the answer in every single one of those things was no. Those aren't moving the needle. On demand, for some reason, is. And our feeling, I think, is part of why that is, I mean, how common it is, but also the role that it has taken on for a lot of employees' learning experience. Because I think for many of us, it's easy to remember, whenever we entered the workforce, learning was very, very different than it is now. So for today, contemporary employees, on demand might be a much larger slice of the pie in terms of what goes into their experiences of learning than these other things that we may assume is just part and parcel of how they learn. And Sam, I think you wanted to comment on this before we moved on?
Well, I was just going to, honestly, rather proudly say that one of our taglines at Litmos is realize greater purpose and performance. So this is kind of singing our song, if you will, because, there is you do the research, but there is this correlation between, sort of connectedness and meaning, and training. And we see it. And that's why we use that tagline, realize greater purpose and performance. Because if people, don't, as you're indicating, if people don't feel any sense of, especially, and I'm going to sort of, in the Great Resignation and, and now what's happening with this quiet quitting, this trend, I'm sure all of you on the meeting today this trend of quiet quitting. Which is basically, for those of you who have not seen that in the headlines, it basically means you try to do as little as possible in your job without getting fired. It's really it's sad because there are ways to remedy that. And in our world, it's you've got to bring people in, and training is one of the most effective ways to do it is in order to make people feel like not only, and one of, Tom's points here is organizational commitment. Well, it's very difficult to achieve organizational commitment if a person doesn't feel personal, professional commitment. You can't jump to organizational commitment if you don't have, if someone's like, my job is lame and I'm just a cog in the wheel and I don't understand what the big purpose is. And that's where the Great Resignation happened in the last year or so. And that's now what's happening with this new phase of that, or that new model of that, which is quiet quitting. And, for organizations that may be suffering from that, now you may not know that you're suffering from it, hence the nature of quiet quitting. But if you do know, then training's your way to really juice it up, pump the gas pedal, and get people involved and give them some meaning to their jobs and say, here's how your particular role, you can improve in your particular role. Take this training path, go up the next level, and then this is how your role contributes to the larger purpose of the organization and stuff like that. I could go on Tom, I'll stop. But this is, again, because we are really committed to this idea of purpose and meaning. So I'll stop there.
Cool. Well, I think everything we're talking about dovetails into sort of pointing things back at, it is about not only the learning experience, but how these individuals are interpreting that experience.
And if it's not, and just one last thing on that, if people, to get back to the idea before that we were talking about relevance and, I can't remember the other exact term, as far as recommending, I think it was suggestions for other courses, stuff like that. If people don't feel like there's a relevance to what they're doing and that the training isn't sort of helping them either professionally or personally, it's probably not going to be very popular or very, very, very useful to people.
Yeah, exactly. And so kind of along those lines in the piece of research we did, we wanted to get some sort of feel for how were people framing their experience. So what is this modern on-demand learning experience? How are they being served these on-demand canapes and spritzers of training? And so what our sample told us is what you see on the screen. So there's a lot of overlap between what's on here. And there should be, after all, every single one of these is about different paths to the same destination, an on-demand course. But the nuances are, in my mind at least, important because they suggest different interpretations of the purpose of on-demand learning being communicated to learners via the path being offered to them. You know, so self-directed learning is there access to this on-demand learning? Do they see it in terms of growth and development? You know, is it more just about accountability to the organization? Are they you know, do they get to courses just through some scheduling and things that tracks their completions? Or is it just about access? They have access to stuff. They know they broadly have access to stuff. So it's just presented to them as like, you have resources, go run around in the field of resources. I don't know what to tell you, like where to find stuff, but you have it. You know, so it's like how are people coming to this? How do they see the availability and how do they interpret that availability of what gets put in front of them?
Yeah, and you know, I know we're kind of pushing up on time here, but because I do know that we want to get to some questions and we're getting kind of toward the end. But so Tom basically referred to the bottom row of this slide here as far as, you know, self-directed, off-the-shelf scheduling reporting, but I would add to that there are the things in the top row here, which is. And I'd be curious to see, Tom, in your next survey, you know, where some of these things in the top row are landing as far as what companies are doing. I do know that we did a different survey either earlier this year or last year, and I was shocked to discover that only 23% of organizations actually have most or all of their learning material mobile ready. Which 23%, but that's okay. That's okay. But that's, you know, but yeah, but I was surprised to see that, especially when we're talking about the world of on-demand and just the world that we live in right now. And that's okay. That's a starting point. But I'd like to see that number get a lot bigger, you know, to have, you know, to be building your learning programs with an eye toward mobile, because we all know that's how we live. That's how we live. And if it, you know, for me, because I work in technology, if I can go do a course from my couch and sit there on my phone and just be like, you know, and it's like, I don't have to go sit at my desk and, you know, so that's kind of the direction. And it's something to sort of aspire to, if you will, for organizations who aren't doing it. I'd love to see, I can't wait to look at the questions in the chat because people would be like, we're totally doing it. But then other things, and probably people on this meeting are not in the, you know, they're not in the 70, whatever, again, I don't do math, the 77%. And then the other thing, you know, there are other capabilities. You know, I was talking about AI earlier, which is super cool, and that's definitely happening. And you can't stop that train. That train's out of the station. But even things like integration sounds complicated. It sounds like, ooh, that's like a big IT thing, but it's actually not that. I mean, if you have a good LMS, you can integrate with your CRM system. You can integrate with your HRIS. You can integrate, and it's not now that the technology's there, you can make it so much easier for people to access their on-demand, or, you know, the training. You know, you got a salesperson who's out, and again, if you have mobile, and then you got a salesperson who's out, they're sitting in their car, and they're going to go in to meet with a client, and they have their CRM open on their phone, and they go, oh, I can do a quick refresher course right here, and it's integrated. Anyway, I'm getting super nerdy, and I won't go into all the technical stuff. But stuff like that is part of what makes the modern learning experience. Gamification is just fun. I mean, humans are humans. Like, we like to have friendly or many people like to have, some people don't, but a lot of people do. A lot of people think like, hey, I'm, you know, first place on the leaderboard, or I just got a new badge. I was just bragging about our training industry badge that on the slide back, you know, people like to say, hey, look I've got a badge. I can go put that on my LinkedIn. You know, I got a badge for completing this course. I'm #1 on the leaderboard, blah, blah, blah. And you can put that on your LinkedIn. You can do stuff that just encourages human nature. And so I think this is sort of the modern learning experience, and all these things are going in this direction. Didn't I say I wasn't going to talk that much about this? Anyway, moving on.
All right, moving on. We're in the home stretch. I promise everybody. All right, so here we're going to talk about some of the correlations that we found in the research, and what they tell us about happy learners and on-demand learning. And so this might be a terrible metaphor, but the easy way it was for me to think about kind of how these relationships work is if high satisfaction or high learner satisfaction with on-demand learning is high over here. What we're describing is what else tends to be high, what else tends to be low, what doesn't seem to matter. So none of these things are causing each other necessarily. It's almost like we're describing the shoes and then what the pants and shirt are that go with those shoes in a sense. So here's some of what we found. So when you had a company that tended to have learners with high on-demand learning satisfaction, they also tended to have pretty high job satisfaction. The company itself tended to use more learning methods, so they were interacting with learning in several different ways, kind of within this on-demand sphere. On the whole, they saw their training as more effective. They also saw their training as more useful and relevant to their job. They're more motivated to engage with training. And I mean, it predicted it in when we did the model, but it's also related to it. High on-demand learning satisfaction, more meaningful work, or at least a more meaningful sense of work. So all these things kind of, it's almost like an all boats rise sort of thing, where like one of these goes up, the others are going to start to inch up with it, but could be caused by a combination of different things. But regardless, they all tend to hang out. They're friends. They go to the mall together, all that sort of stuff. So when it comes to maybe what was it not related to, so very interesting to me, one of the negative relationships we found with on-demand satisfaction was with learner control. So paradoxically, the people like on-demand learning if you don't give them too much freedom is kind of what that suggests. So the idea of like just push people into the woods of online courses and be like, hope you hack your way through, bye. Like learning path, like that's just where whatever you decide it is, like just go. Yes, people might say they want that, but what you actually find based on the data is you give them a little too much control, they don't like it. Really when it boils down to it. And then lastly, I always think these things are interesting where there was no relationship. So on-demand learning satisfaction, it didn't make any difference like how good or bad the rest of the training was. So like how many challenges the L&D department maybe was grappling with at the time didn't really seem to have a bearing on the satisfaction with the on-demand experience. And then also to me, the one of the ding 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 bell ringer type of things, company size, no bearing. Big company, small company. That is not a driver of on-demand learning satisfaction. So you don't have to be 10,000 employees to have an on-demand experience that's satisfying. You can be 100. And vice versa. Like yes, there are problems of scale, but the experience is the experience, and company size doesn't really seem to have much of a bearing on that. All right, so to try to wrap up, we have a few minutes of questions, as long as I don't go too long. So some takeaways to summarize what we've talked through today. So on-demand learning is complex. I think as we talked through, it's made of a few different ingredients. It's kind of this multi-headed beast for learners to engage with, and their experience with it matters. It matters to satisfaction, as we've seen, which itself is related to lots of other things. And on-demand learning is common. It's a driver of meaningful work, as our model showed. Its relationship to other important work outcomes and stuff I just mentioned, and really kind of one of the key of it all is to try to improve this on-demand learning experience. It's a critical part of in today's hybrid learning environments. Like how do you move the needle? How do you improve things? How do you make learners engage with more training? How do you use the carrot of training as a driver of things like employee retention? How do you do that? On-demand on-demand experience. That's what this data is suggesting. And I think in doing so sort of reframes the question I asked at the very start. What could learning possibly have to do with meaning at work? Where could it be used rather than how is it even related? And I think with that, unless you have anything to add, Sam, we're...
Well, I do. I have a little special, a bonus. Yes. I have a bonus. Okay. But before, we're going to go to my bonus, but not, that sounded wrong. We have some great feedback coming in that we're going to get to address. And thank you everybody that's chatting in, because we've got some really great comments to speak to. But before we do, I have a special gift from Litmos to everybody who's on the meeting today as an attendee. And Tom, or I can go to the next slide. Do you want to go to the Joy of Learning slide? Mm-hmm. So this is a special gift for everybody who's with us today. So when Tom and I were kind of noodling on like the topic for today, and I was saying, hey, we at Litmos, we just did this really cool piece, this ebook, and it's based on, depending on the age of the people on this meeting, you may remember that there was this very famous cookbook called, depending on your age, you may remember, or maybe your mom had it, or your grandma had it, or your dad had it, whatever. There was this really famous cookbook called Joy of Cooking. And so we did this really fun piece called Joy of Learning. And I shared it with Tom, and that's how we kind of came up with this idea about talking about happy learners. And so today, not only it's available in the On24 interface here, you have some sort of widget that's called related content. So we have so free download. It's in the related content, and you can just go grab it. And it's really fun. It's something that our team at Litmos made, and it's basically recipes, wink, wink, for an L&D dinner party. And it's fun, and it's about how to engage different group. I mean, from, sales to service to, partners and it's a whole fun way of not only giving you a little giggle, but also giving you some information and maybe some tips that may help you in an entertaining way, make not just happy learners, as Tom and I have been talking about in the title of this webinar, but maybe even joyful ones. And oh, by the way, Tom, I've been taking notes. I really appreciate all your food metaphors that you've been slipping into and I wrote forks and courses and canapes and spritzers. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. So yeah, you are too funny, but hope you guys grab it. You are, that was well done. Well done. Hey, I didn't even mean that pun, but well done. And wink, wink. And so if you don't want to download the PDF here, maybe you're on your mobile or you're in a place where you're not going to download a PDF. We also did make this nice little URL there that you can go to litmos.com/joyoflearning or just save that or copy it or whatever. And you just go grab it. It's not gated. You just go get it. So that's it. So while we're waiting for questions, and we hope you enjoy Joy of Learning. So let's, Tom, do you mind if I circle back on a couple that are in the chat?
Nope.
As far as questions, and I'm gonna pop back to, just so that we stay. Hopefully everybody got the URL. If not, chat us. It's litmos.com/joyoflearning. If you're not going to download the PDF that's in the interface here. So there were several comments about the idea of self-directed, which I think maybe we didn't do that great a job of saying that self-directed, in my opinion, should be supplemental or complementary to directed. Is that your take, Tom? Because some people were saying, oh yeah, that makes people feel good, but it's not really, you can't really have a, thank you from comments from Emily and others that doesn't really give you like a business-centric training program. And absolutely, point taken. What's your thought on that?
So my thought on this, I feel like I know there are a lot of people out there that are in favor of kind of like, well, let learners be self-directed. I don't believe in the I don't buy the behavioral economics sort of approach that like they're going to make choices in their best interest all the time. Like, No, like if they're looking at two courses and one is more job relevant than the other, but the one that's more job relevant is half an hour longer than the other one, that's going to weigh on their decision, and it shouldn't. So like I think there are lots of times where maybe the self-direction is good, but what they need might not be what they would choose themselves, and I think in more instances it should be more directed than not, or at least like funneled down so they get to choose maybe between two options, but that choice has been dictated to them rather than kind of they're free to just combine any two things and choose themselves.
Yeah, and I think I was making an assumption that I probably should have clarified, which is that because it's in our world, at least, we wouldn't say 100% self-directed.
Yeah,
that's something that you do in addition to, and it can't be. I mean, organizations have compliance courses that they have to assign. It's not 100%. You have to have things that are also pushed, if you will, but self-directed should be an available option or a key.
Yes.
Wait, Tom, wait for it. It should be a slice of the pie. But yeah, I mean, so I guess we should have. Oh, thank you. That's funny. Thank you. We get some really nice comments in the chat. We've been told we should take our show on the road, Tom.
I mean, that's icing on the cake.
Oh, stop now. That's awesome. And I also want to say thanks because we obviously have some Litmos customers in the audience right now, and I just want to say thank you to a handful of people who I don't, it's just first names in most cases, but there's been a lot of really nice comments about how easy Litmos, I mean, and seriously, I'm not being commercially at all. I'm reading the chat, and thank you for those of you who are like, yeah, Litmos makes this all really easy. So thank you, but we appreciate you very much. And okay, sorry. Anyway, so let's, but I wanted to acknowledge, that we are getting those nice comments in the chat. So thank you. You are not unseen in the chat here. So Tom, were there any, we have lots of comments and things that we can speak to. Are there any that there are some funny cooking metaphors coming in on the chat now.
Yeah.
Were there any in particular that you wanted to address? There's a difficult question that I want to read, but I don't, we only have, I know we're at time. So if I give you a really hard one, can you do it as fast as possible? And then we've got to hand it. We got to take off.
Yep.
Okay. So this is a tough one. Okay. I'm not even sure I fully understand the question. So this is like putting you on the spot. So why do you think satisfaction with on-demand training was important to meaningful work in your model, but broader training satisfaction wasn't? And I had to literally write it. Do you understand that question?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm like, what does that mean?
So to me, the difference is when we think about a general broader training satisfaction, there are a lot of different components that make up that. So it could be, classroom training, but then there's the instructor, there's the facilities, there's maybe the materials, whatever the content was. And there's broad sweeping variation, I think, between, different formats. On-demand learning kind of constricts the incoming channel of what you can get. There's still lots of options within it, but the fact that it needs to be on demand kind of makes it a learning experience that I think for the reason of being the on-demand or having an on-demand component sort of separates it from the wider training experience. And my hunch, I think, as I said when we presented it, is that in the past 2 years, most people's experience with things have been on demand. So if when we're asking about what impacts your life, what impacts your life at work, what makes you get up in the morning and then get out of bed, what's that? That if the learning experience is part of that, I think the on demand part of it is probably more in front of people's face. They're interacting with it more often than maybe they are with traditional forms of training. Like, yeah, they schedule some classroom thing 2 weeks out or whatever, but in the meantime, I mean, how many modules could they do, and beyond that one classroom event? So I think it's more in their day to day, and for that reason, I think it matters in the model where maybe the general training stuff doesn't. Like, the general training stuff is further away from, I got up this morning and I got in the car or walked to my home office and turned stuff on, whichever it is, like during that journey, kind of what was I likely to face that day? And I think the on-demand part of it is part of more people's days than kind of a traditional learning experience. And that's why I think it mattered in the model.
That's great. And that was wonderful. And thank you so much. I mean, we at Litmos always appreciate your insights from the research side. And we are absolutely out of time. So I'm going to hand things back over before I say thank you, Tom, very, very much. Back over to Elizabeth with Training Industry. And thank you all for being such a great audience. And we've got such great comments, and we really always appreciate your interaction. So back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Thanks, Tom. I always love a good cooking metaphor, so super fun. And yeah, lots of kudos here in the chat. So great to be with you both. Just to kind of wrap us up quickly, just wanted to invite everyone to join us for some upcoming training industry webinars. You can register for these or watch past events at trainingindustry.com. Our webinars are pre-qualified for credit hours by ISPI, HRCI, SHRM, and CPTM. CPTM is the Certified Professional in Training Management program that assists you in developing the skills you need to manage the future training needs of your organization. You can find out more about that at trainingindustry.com/CPTM. And next month, in just about 2 weeks, we are hosting the next online training industry conference and expo, where we are tackling the challenges surrounding training the changing workforce. You can learn more about that and register at TICE2022.com. Took a look at that ebook. Love it. So fun. Hope you all had a chance to grab the link. Once again, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Sam, for your presentation. To all of you for attending, and our sponsor, SAP Litmos. Until next time, I'm Elizabeth Parker. Hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.